and we're taking photographs, and my guide's a good photographer, so he's got me in different positions, and we're holding the horns and all that jazz. And he looks past me with this ghastly look. And I'm like, what? Chupacabra, Bigfoot, pterodactyl? What do we got here? He goes, don't move. I said, well, I'm holding this thing's head. It's not very light. And he goes, there's a bloody ram on the top of the rim up here. He's got blood all over him. I said, that's his, you got to shoot this thing.
Hi there, John McAdams here. Welcome to episode 367 of the Big Game Hunting Podcast. I am excited to have Phil Massaro back on the show with me again today to talk about his recent Aoudad hunt out in West Texas. So in this episode, we discuss the story of that hunt, some of the unique challenges associated with hunting Aoudad, what gear he used, how some of those gear choices made things easier for him, how some of the gear he used made things more difficult for him, some lessons he learned, general Aoudad hunting tips, terminal ballistics, all the same sort of things that you would normally expect with a discussion between me and Phil. It is always great having Phil on the show. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this discussion. But before we get into that, make sure you are on my email list. If you like the podcast, you will love the emails I send out every weekday about hunting, shooting, ballistics, etc. Sign up at the link in the episode description or at biggamehuntingpodcast.com/ebook. Okay, let's get started talking to Phil about hunting Aoudad. Well, good morning, Phil. It is always a pleasure to talk to you, and it is great having you back on the show again with me today.
Thank you, John. It's always a pleasure to be here. Love doing your podcast.
Well, contrary to popular belief, Phil Massaro does hunt outside of Africa and outside of the Northeast for whitetail from time to time. So
I've been known.
Yeah. So tell us about this hunt. Where were you hunting Aoudad?
We were hunting Aoudad just outside of Marfa at a famous place called Cibolo Creek Ranch.
Okay.
So close to the Mexican border that on a couple of our hikes and drives, the cell phone pinged and said, welcome, bienvenidos a Mexico. I said, oh boy, are we still in the United States? I don't have my passport. It's in the room. But yeah, it's a beautiful patch of ground. It's right in the middle of the Chihuahuan Desert. And it was extremely dry while we were there.
So when were you there?
End of February. So okay. They predominantly hunt Aoudad. They told me September, and we were one of the last hunts, so say 1st of March maybe. Mm-hmm. And they chase them around those hills pretty hard.
Yeah, so that part of Texas, as I understand it, is like right in the heart of like the really good Aoudad hunting. There's a lot of people, seems like, that hunt around Marfa for Aoudad. Yeah,
Marfa's the hot spot for sure. I've hunted Aoudad twice, two different rams. Once we were with Miller Brothers up at Fluvanna, which is a little bit northeast from where I was, and they had great Aoudad country there too. But that Cibolo Creek Marfa area, that's a really famous spot.
Now the problem with that part of Texas is not really close to anywhere. Did you fly into San Antonio and drive out there? Or?
We did. It was a bit of a pilgrimage, and it was actually it was a 2-day hunt, because it worked with everybody's schedule. So, we drove 7 hours, 6 hours, whatever it was from San Antonio. It was a hell of a ways, for a 2-day hunt, but it was well worth it. I mean, it was a great time.
All right. So to set the stage, what rifle, ammo, scope, all that stuff were you using?
So it was a media hunt, so I didn't get to use my own gear. It was put on by Browning and Leupold, so I had a Browning X-Bolt, a pretty one too, stainless steel metal, a nice wood stock, some engraving on it, and in 300 Winchester with their max point ammo, and it was topped with a Leupold VX6 HD Gen 2 3-18, and we had the Leupold their BX4 Range HD range finding binoculars, but the new Gen 2. That's just coming out. It's secret squirrel stuff up until now. Where the old ones were available 10 power, these are both 10 and 12 power. And boy, I tell you, that rangefinder in there is amazing.
So was that the new Browning X-Bolt Generation 2?
I believe it was, yes.
Yeah. So I have the old from last year, Leupold BX4 Range HD. So I'm sure you'll get into the differences between that and the new one. So go ahead and tell us a story about the hunt. We'll dive into things in more detail as necessary.
Well, there were 4 of us hunting, and we kind of split up into groups of 2. Sean Skipper from Leupold and I, we've been buddies forever, and we kind of paired up and went off with a guy named David, who was a very experienced guy, really knew what he was doing. And as he explained to us, he said, "Look, this isn't going to be easy. You know, these things have been chased up and uphill and over dale, you know,
Mm-hmm.
for 4 or 5 months now. So if we see one, you know, we don't have a lot of time. We're going to try and get on it." First day, we probably saw 400 ewes and what do they call the little ones there? You know, the calves. They no rams, just zero rams, and you know we were up to our eyeballs in females. So it kind of looked at I looked at Skipper and I said, "We got to get two in one day now. This is not going to be easy."
Mm-hmm.
But like I say, beautiful country. Got to see a whole bunch of stuff, and it's amazing to me how they're not actually neither sheep nor goat, but we can get into that later. How they blend into that country, those real red rocks, and you know those their hide is just absolutely perfect, very similar to the Northern African Barbary Coast and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So day two comes around, and by about 9:30 in the morning, we were seeing again more herds of ewes and nothing, and finally we found a herd that had a good ram in there. The problem was, as you know, if you've ever seen pictures of West Texas, there ain't nothing to hide behind.
Mm-hmm.
So and the minute they see the glare of anything, you know, they're gone. They're not stupid. They know man means danger. So the closest we could get, as we set up, was 650 yards.
Ooh.
Now, I do a lot of shooting. I always have a gun with me, and you know, practice all the time. But 650-yard shots are an absolute poke. We set up. We had a tripod with a rifle cradle. We both of us plus the guide independently ranged the ram as he stood about 100 feet below the skyline on this precipice of rock, and we all came up with 650 yards even. The hook was, the only reason I took the shot was that there was absolutely no wind.
Mm-hmm.
We verified that back, forth, sideways. We watched them kick up dust, and it just kind of came up and down, so there was nothing intermediate that we could see or hear or feel. And we set up. I turned the dial on the loophole scope and tickled the trigger on the Browning and made contact first shot. And it took another one to put him down, but and of course he fell off the rocks and dinged his horn up real good, you know, just to make the adventure. And then we had the nice 700-800, you know, 700-800 foot vertical climb to go retrieve him because he wasn't going to fall down the mountain for us. So it made for an interesting morning, but we got it done.
So not only was it a long-ish shot, but it wasn't flat either. You were shooting up.
Oh yeah, it was uphill, and I don't recall the exact angle in degrees. I know the thing displayed it, but I was kind of under a little bit of stress. 650 yards is further than I'm really happy to shoot at an unwounded animal, but there was no getting closer. I mean, there was just they had us made. They were watching us, and you know, when you get on one of those tripods with a cradle, it's extremely steady. It was too steep of an uphill angle for me to get prone and make the shot. So I got, you know, in a comfortable sitting position. And this is something I will advise any potential Aoudad hunter. Your practice is not off a bench. Your practice, I mean, yeah, prone can happen, but use different field positions to enhance your hunt. Otherwise, I'd have come home probably empty-handed. Mm-hmm. And as it turned out, Skipper, I think, took his ram at just over 500.
Jeez.
So, you know, the shots were long.
Yeah.
The shots were long for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be often the case out there. Like you said, open country, you could see a long way. There's not a lot of places to hide, especially with the animals being skittish at the end of the season like you're talking about.
Well, you know, the other Aoudad hunt I'd done was back in 2019 with that Miller Brothers Outfitters, and same time of year. It was the end of February, and it was very cold up there. As a matter of fact, I think it was 12 degrees that morning, but it got up into the 50s. And while we were glassing, goats at up to 1,000 yards, you know, we happily stumbled upon a really good ram at 160. I kind of grabbed the guide, pulled his shirt back because they were just below us in the rim rock, and I made the cameraman give me his tripod just to get on him real steady. And you know, I wasn't going to kick sand in the face of good fortune.
Yeah, really.
So it does happen. But you know, they're such an interesting animal. You know, I'm not sure the breeding habits, but I do know for certain that they start to drop their calves in February, because on that hunt with Miller Brothers, we were kind of creeping along this patch of rim rock, and I looked down on the ground, and as you know, there's no water there. There's this giant wet spot, and I hear, I said, what the hell is that? And one of the ewes had just given birth.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And this little wet kid came out, and we're literally 4 feet from the edge of the precipice. And I said, boys, back up. They're like, why? I said, because Mama's going to come bowling out of the bush and knock us off the cliff. But it was a really neat thing to see that little guy or girl, whatever it was, just born, thinking I was its mommy. But no, they're a cool success story because while there are certain hunts you can do in their natural range in North Africa, which are rare and expensive. I think they were brought over in the 30s or 40s to Texas, and boy, they've thrived.
Mm-hmm.
The numbers are huge. And I am not a wealthy man. I do get around, and I've been blessed to do a whole bunch of cool stuff. But those North American sheep hunts are not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard 6 figures for some of them. For the stone sheep and some of the desert bighorns and stuff. And as far as I'm concerned, if you want to call that the greatest poor man's sheep hunt you're going to find, Aoudad's where it's at. I mean, It's probably the most underrated hunt in North America.
I have heard, well, actually, I've heard this. I know this, that they live almost side by side with the desert bighorn in West Texas.
Yeah.
And so, hunting them is basically the same experience as hunting a desert bighorn in Texas.
Oh, sure it is. Sure it is. And it's funny because there was a standard billy goat off a farm that had gotten loose, and for years he's been running with the Aoudad. He's kind of like Mac Daddy out there, He's just doing cool stuff. And so they'll hang with other animals, but boy, they just bred prolifically. We saw huge, healthy herds, which was awesome.
Do they hunt any of the females at all, as far as you know?
They do. I think that's offered at a cheaper rate. If somebody wants to add one on, I don't know. And again, I don't want to speak for them, but I don't know that they offer just a female hunt exclusively. Maybe they do a cull thing. I don't know. You'd have to look it up.
Yeah. So I used to live in El Paso, and I really regret not doing an Aoudad hunt when I lived out there several years ago, when these hunts were less expensive than they are now, too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the first one I went on, I had to kind of look it up, and I went, isn't that an African animal? Because I know we've got scimitar horned oryx and a bunch of those northern African species that are, Texas pretty much has everything, but
yeah.
To make that trip to Africa to do that on its own turf, that'd be a healthy investment. And I tell you what, that Texas thing is a hell of a lot of fun. It looks like the Roadrunner and Coyote cartoons, and some of these places are virtually inaccessible. It's but what you look at this, you go, I'm not climbing that hill, and then you watch them go up it like it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
They're like they're climbing stairs. It's not even fair.
So tell me a little bit about that max point ammo that you use. I've heard of it, but I know nothing about it.
Okay, so that was a little bit of a concern in my mind. While it's wonderfully accurate, I think that Browning was we went to the range. And I fired 3 3-shot groups, and they were all under an inch. So we had, a verified 0 for anything potentially long range. It's got a very large polymer tip on the end, that Browning yellow gold polymer tip, and it's designed for rapid energy transfer. And my first thought was, if we get one at 100 yards, I might be in a little bit of trouble, because having hunted them once and seen a couple of guys on that same hunt, and I'll tell you a story about this just after this. If you hit them wrong, or if the bullet isn't stiff enough, you're going to have a bad day, a real bad day. As it turned out, at 650 yards, I did some calculations. That bullet slowed down to about 1,200 feet per second.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah. It was 15 minutes of elevation, over 100 inches to get out there.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to do that again. I'm glad it all worked out well, and there was no wounded animal or anything. Like I say, if there was any wind, I would have just, not happening. I'll just shake it off. But,
so what was the terminal performance of that bullet like at such a low impact velocity like that?
It hit him, and it hit him maybe just a little bit back of the lungs. He stood there, though. He didn't go. He didn't go anywhere. The second one, knocked him off the rock. We didn't actually do an autopsy for the bullet because of the situation we were in. We were literally climbing hands and knees to get to him, so it wasn't an easy time to go digging through the entrails. But I would say to you that that's a fantastic deer bullet. And maybe I'd want something a little stiffer if I were to recommend a bullet to an Aoudad guy going on a hunt.
So I'm looking at the Browning website right now. It says that bullet, the 180 grain version of 300 Win Mag, has a BC of
422.
422. So pretty low for
not the greatest, the greatest. And I wasn't exactly anticipating a 100-yard shot nor a 650-yard shot. I was hoping somewhere in the 2 to 3 range, but. I would have felt better about a partition or something, but hey, that goat's in the salt.
So, how physically big is a Aoudad ram?
They say, go 350 on a huge one. I would wager that they're probably closer to 2.25 on the average.
Yeah.
You know, the one I shot this the last time at Cibolo Creek, I bet he had 28-inch horns.
Mm-hmm.
My other one was 30 on the button.
Mm-hmm.
And when they get that big, they stand out. They just, what's O'Connor said, the big ones look big.
Yeah.
So you could tell among the younger rams and ewes and stuff that's the ram. But I will say this: they are tough. They are like a Nilgai or a zebra. If you hit them wrong, or even if you hit them right and the bullet doesn't do exactly what you want, they're going to go.
Mm-hmm.
For example, on that Miller Brothers hunt, there were two of us hunting, and we split up. I took the cameraman to do a little filming, and my buddy, who I will not name, went the opposite direction. We spent the morning. We found a little baby just born, and then we kind of came back for lunch and wandered off in a different direction to go find a different herd. And the radio kind of clicked and hissed, and they said, "Yeah, he shot one, but they can't find it." Now we were both shooting 300 Win Mags. We were shooting Norma Bond Strike at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good polymer tip bonded core bullet, and as I said earlier, we bumped into that ram at 160, 180, whatever it was, and finished him off. He kind of went down in a little bowl and died. And we're sitting there, figured 2 miles away from where they were looking for that other goat, and we're taking photographs. And my guide's a good photographer, so he's got me in different positions, and we're holding the horns and all that jazz. And he looks past me with this ghastly look, and I'm like, "What? Chupacabra, Bigfoot, pterodactyl? What do we got here?" He goes, "Don't move." I said, "Well, I'm holding this thing's head. It's not very light." And he goes, "That there's a bloody ram on the top of the rim up here. He's got blood all over him." I said, that's his, you got to shoot this thing. Mm-hmm. That's his ring. No, I can't do that. I said, "Look, we're 2 miles away. The thing didn't stumble into, the Manson family, shoot the goat." So he had to make a phone call to make sure it was cool. He took my rifle leaning over my goat and shot that one. Jeez. But that thing went almost 2 miles on him.
My goodness.
Because the shot was just a little far forward. And obviously he was bleeding, but he bled, I don't know if it was a blood trail they could have followed. And, my buddy was ecstatic that we got it and finished it off.
So is there, is the location of their vitals in an unusual spot compared to deer or African game, or did the guy just make a bad shot?
I think he just pulled it a little too far forward. Maybe it hit a branch. You know what happens when you're hunting. Things do happen, unfortunately. Yeah. I would say take them through the shoulder, for two reasons. One, they are an African animal, so they're going to be shifted a little bit more forward. Mm-hmm. But B, you take a shoulder out, and it prevents them from going over hill and dale. You're still going to get the lungs. It's a vital shot, mm-hmm. but it's a crippling shot, so he's not going to wander over a cliff. I mean, he goes off the wrong cliff. He might not be able to be recovered, or B, he might be smashed to pieces. Mm-hmm.
So in this case, or say like in the case of the rams that you have shot, how big are they through the shoulders? How wide are they compared to other animals?
I want to say they're 20, 24 inches anyway. I mean, they're pretty big. Mm-hmm. 18 to 20, maybe. I've never measured one, but
I mean, are they similar in size to say something like a Blessbach, or are they bigger?
I think they're a little bit bigger than the Blessbach. They're a little more stout. Mm-hmm. But you got to watch out for the hair, because they get chaps, all throughout their chest and going down their front legs, which makes such a great mount. You see guys do that half body mount.
Yeah.
But I think that can fool you, in certain angles, thinking there's more body than there really is. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what happened to my buddy. He just went a little bit forward.
Yeah. I've heard similar stories about mountain goat and Himalayan tar. These, they're all tough animals. All these mountain animals seem to be super tough. And they have a lot of hair that can mess up your shot angles on them. You shoot at the wrong spot or something 100%, like that.
100%. Yeah, it's a weird thing, especially when this isn't an animal that we're all used to seeing. I mean, we've all seen white-tailed deer our whole lives, or most people have anyway. Mm-hmm. When you do get into Africa and you see something like a Nyala, where it's just got some of that hair in the same kind of situation, or, one of the cats when they get into a strange angle, it can fool with you, and it's unless you got to do it, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. Talking to your guides, what seems to be a problem? Like when people have problems over there, what is it? Is it because of them making a bad shot, because it's a long shot or shooting at the wrong spot or what?
Their complaints are probably twofold. One, guys being out of shape,
Yeah.
and I'm 53. I've been surveying since I was 11 years old. My hips have a lot of miles on them, and when I look at those mountains, I'm like, am I that mad at that goat? I do it. Don't get me wrong, but some guys just physically can't.
Yeah.
And when you deal with a guide who works in that situation for half the year, he's turning into a goat. He climbs those hills like it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
He'll put the head and hide on a pack and come back and up, back off that cliff as if he's walking to go get a cup of coffee. Where it's also an elevation thing. I spend my life at under 2,000 feet.
Yeah.
And the minute I get to 5,000, I'm like, y'all got any more of that oxygen? I need some more of that, please. And 10,000 just cripples me. So I think that might be an issue as well.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable footwear can be a problem, but shooting from field positions, I think, seems to be a global issue, and it's going to be very apparent on an Aoudad hunt.
Mm-hmm.
There are no trees to use for a rest. I mean, there might be a bush or something like that, but most everything in that part of the country's got thorns on it, and you're going to regret that maneuver. So much like Africa, you want to practice off sticks or with a shooting tripod. If you've got one like the Spartan javelin stuff is awesome. It's got that little socket that goes in there.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of carry it with you. You can get seated, or if you want a little bipod and you're prone, that kind of thing. It all makes a lot of sense. But practice. Get off the bench once you know the gun's sighted. And learn how to hit a target from those field positions is paramount.
So I've done, so like I said, I used to live in El Paso, and I've hunted a lot in southern New Mexico, and some of the areas that I've hunted deer and elk and whatnot in, there have been Aoudad that live in that area. I wasn't hunting them, but it was literally Aoudad habitat, and I have shot a ton seated using a backpack or a tripod or something as a rest. I've shot. The only animals I've ever shot in real life from the prone have been pronghorn, and everything else has been usually seated or standing.
It's tough to get. I mean, especially in Texas where it's all rocks in that area where I was, and it's all thorns. I mean, that trying not to scream "ouch" when you got thorns all over the front of your body is a different story. Prone is probably the most steady position, but to your point. When we go down to the Sam shooting school at the FTW in Southern Texas, they put on a great program for hunters where they make you bring a backpack to, like you were describing, get in a seated position. One of the guys, the cameraman took an Aoudad on this last hunt, and I actually put my back against his while he was seated. I said, just push against me and get as steady as you can. Because he goes, I'm wobbling. I said, no, I know. I got a big fat back. Push on it. It allowed him to make the shot, which was kind of cool. So, by any means necessary is the quote, and you do have to adapt and overcome. Sometimes your binocular becomes the best rifle rest in the world.
Yeah.
So wait a minute, it's a very expensive one, but that would be the advice I'd give. I'd pick a solid bullet. Somewhere 6.5 and above I'd be happier with. I don't think a 338 is too much for him.
Mm-hmm.
Something bonded or monometal would be a great choice. And I think this is one of those hunts where a Magnum is warranted. Mm-hmm. Because I mean at 650 it's got much less drop than anything non-Magnum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is all very interesting, and we're dealing with several different things here. Where you have an animal that it's not giant like an eland or a kudu, but it's big and it is resilient, and you're shooting it often at extended range. You're going to have a lower velocity impact on it. I mean, 400, 500, 600 yard shots on these animals seem pretty common in that general range. Joseph Von Benedict talked on his podcast once of shooting one, I think with a 30-06, and I want to say it was something like a really tough Browning bullet, maybe their copper bullet or something like that. But he said he ended up having to shoot it 7 times. And then he realized later, after he was piecing it all together, that he was shooting it so far out there that the bullets had slowed down that they weren't expanding at all when he was hitting it.
So that's the challenge here, John. And to JVB's point, he's right. You need a bullet stiff enough to handle impact velocities at 100 yards. yet something soft enough that'll give guaranteed expansion at wherever you're talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
I know the Von Benedict boys shoot long range much more than I do, and they're much better at it. But having chatted with them, there's a couple of bullets that really fill that niche. Federal's Terminal Ascent is one.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah. Their trophy bonded tip is another. Nosler's Accubon long range is a great one for that. So you can something in that with those similar characteristics.
Yeah. The ELDX I think would be great for those longer shots. I don't know about taking a 100-yard shot on an Aoudad with one of them.
Here's the thing with the ELDX. They're generally speaking of heavy for caliber configuration. So even though they're not bonded or a monometal, they do have the sectional density to get it done.
Yeah.
My dad has used a Sierra flat base 180 out of a 300 Remington Ultra Mag. I can't talk him out of it. On Moose of all things, and they bang flop. They drop for him. He knows what he's doing. Does the jacket come apart? Probably.
Yeah.
But as a lot of people have said, at what point in the animal's death did the bullet fail?
Yeah.
So
it wasn't exploding on the shoulder, so to speak.
Right.
Him, no.
Right. So again, with this Aoudad thing, the toughness of the animal on a close shot, that could be it. The expansion at long range. But what I really like to think is, as a shooter for this, if you're going to prepare for, even a 500, 400 yard, whatever it may be, keep the time of flight to a minimum. Because while I had the most blessed situation in the world of dead calm air, the wind is always blowing there. And if you can minimize time of flight with a good BC bullet, your wind drift and wind deflection values, they go down drastically. Because that can make a mess of things. You read the wind wrong by 3 miles an hour, and it could turn it into a gut shot.
Yeah. That's a mix of your velocity and your BC, and making that shot with a BC with .422 is a whole lot more difficult than one of 0.6 and above.
Absolutely. I mean, look, trajectory is trajectory. We can a monkey can dial for that. We could train a gorilla to do that. That's not a problem. But reading that wind is where things really, really become a challenge.
And that's got to be an interesting thing that happens on these media hunts sometimes, where you show up and you're using what we got for you. And
you realize this now. Everybody's, Phil, you got it made. I said, okay, let me see you do this with a rifle you've never spent any time with. And I'm not tooting my own horn, because that could have went south in a heartbeat, But we're there to test gear, and it worked out really well. But I do want to say again, those new Gen 2 range finding binoculars. If it wasn't for the fact that we could see it, we knew what we were ranging at 12 power, rather than with a 4X or even a 6X little handheld rangefinder. Am I getting the rocks behind him 30 yards?
Yeah.
Because that's going to be a dead miss in the trajectory, adjustment. So there's the answer to the question. Is that piece of gear worth it? Well, in my opinion, that made the whole hunt.
Yeah. So tell us more about the range-finding binoculars.
So they've upgraded the optics a little bit, which is really cool. They've included it. It's got the same TMOA trajectory software technology, where you can match your bullet profile and speed to one of 15 different things, and it'll actually give you ballistic correction if your scope doesn't have it. And that's pretty damn good for what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's got the archery stuff in it too. You can program it for bow hunters, shot angle, arrow weight, et cetera, draw, all those different parameters can go in there. They've changed the, where the other ones had like a stippled feel to them. This is a smoother thing, but it's a little more rubbery. So it's a consistent grip. It can be configured left button or right button for left-handed people, which is kind of cool. Very simple to screw. I mean, essentially they gave me the binocular. I was like, yep, this works.
Yeah.
It was that simple. But the 12 for this particular application, the 12 power magnification was huge. That made a world of difference. We all knew we were on that goat, not the rocks behind them, not something in front of them, whatever the case may have been, and it came up with the same number within a yard.
Okay, so you had a pair, Sean Skipper had a pair, both lasing it.
Yep.
Okay, we're looking at the same thing.
We're looking at the same goat and not getting the rocks behind him. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that's happened. How far is he? 312. How about 429? Wait, what?
Yeah. You're ranging something in front of him and then behind him. And oh man,
And 25 yard at that distance, a 25-yard error is it's over. It's either over his back or underneath him.
Yeah, definitely. So How did you calculate your holdover with this? Were you using the binoculars, or did you have an app?
No, what we this is the beauty. This is the other piece of gear that I think is absolutely invaluable. Leupold's CDS system, the custom dial system. They will you buy a Leupold VX5 HD or a VX6 HD, and it comes with a turret, external marked in MOA. So it's 1, 2, 3 with quarter-minute adjustments. You tell them, look, I'm shooting a 300 Win Mag with a Barnes LRX 175 grain bullet at 2975 feet per second with a density altitude of 3,000 feet at this temperature, and they will cut you a dial marked in yardage. And damn it, it works. And so it's this simple. Range your target, 425 yards, dial 425 on the dial, break the trigger. There's no there's wind hold, obviously. Yeah. But as far as elevation goes, it's a dead hold.
And so in this case, even though you were using somebody else's gun that they chose for you with their ammo, they chose all that, it was zeroed right, and it had the right dial on it that was cut correctly.
So they spend a lot of time at Leupold, messing with different ammo, and Leupold and Browning work together, Browning Winchester, they work together quite a bit. So that's a pretty solid relationship. They knew what was going on, but the key was that we went out the first morning and spent 25 minutes or half an hour verifying this thing was zeroed at 100. So it was no joke. I mean, if you screw that part up, no dial in the world is going to save you.
Yeah.
But if I were a hunter and I was looking at one of these, be it an elk hunt or a long range pronghorn hunt or one of those things, that CDS system is invaluable. You cannot put a price tag on it. It takes the thinking out.
Yep. Yeah, I've used it several times myself. I have it on my rifle. There have been many instances where I've had it and not had to use it because I'm ready for a 450-yard shot, and I take a 50-yard shot.
I like that, though.
Yeah.
I'll take that. I'd rather be lucky than good.
But the few times I have had to actually dial, like you said, I got it cut right. I got it zeroed. You dial to 325 or whatever it is, and boom, there it is.
Right. And look, everyone, well, that's kind of cheating. Well, using a rifle is cheating if that's how you want to do it. If you want to be a real man, go out there and headbutt the Aoudad. That's not going to happen. We're trying to be humane about things. And when you have a situation, let me just say all this stuff about long-range shooting. I will take that 50-yard shot all day, every day over this 650 stuff. We just couldn't get closer. So what you want to do is if you're going to even attempt that kind of thing, get the best gear you can use and let you as the shooter be the weak link in the chain. Practice. And I think a great idea would be for a guy to take a 22, just a regular 22 long rifle, and get a dial cut for that and take that out to 300, because you want to talk about a challenge. There you go.
Yeah.
Just on steel targets, have that little bullet drop at 300, whatever the distance may be. That'll sharpen your eye and really train you for, but it'll make you intimately familiar with the system, how that works.
Yeah, that's, going, training wheels isn't the right analogy with it, because a 22 at 300 is really freaking hard.
Oh, yeah. God, yeah. We used to shoot it at, beer kegs. We had a half barrel out there at 300. And I had a guy who could actually take a 22 target pistol and routinely hit it at 300.
Wow.
Using Kentucky windage and all that other stuff. But with rifles, we'd put a little target on it and kind of get, better and better. But that was back in the, when we were trying to use a ballistically compensated reticle. It's got to be this power and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. With this dial system, it doesn't matter. Any power works because you're dialing for elevation. And it's actually genius.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned taking a steep-ish uphill shot on this. So I'm assuming that you were able to get a good angle corrected distance.
Well, there's several modes within this range finding binocular. One is line of sight, and what that does, it compensates for the angle. So just like in surveying, when we measure land surveying, it's called plane surveying, PLANE, whereas we reduce all of the distances measured to level. So it was as if it were on a pool table, even though there's mountains, and we have to compensate for what we call the vertical angle. It's the cosine of the angle times the overall distance, and that reduces it to a certain thing. So you may be looking, and if you were to measure it with a surveying transit, it may be 375 yards, but across the flat it's only 325, and that's what the trajectory has to be compensated for. And look, it worked.
Yeah.
If you want to prove something, that one worked. I mean, yeah, I could break a trigger. I'll give you that. But boy, I tell you, if there was a flaw in that system, it would have went under or over.
Well, that is really cool. I have the Gen 1 version of the BX4 Range HD, and
Mm-hmm.
they're a good rangefinder. So that's
Sure.
cool that they are continuing to upgrade and update that system.
Yeah, Loophole's been busy lately, and they are unequivocally. I use other optics, but they are my favorite optic company.
Mhm.
The Gen 2 scope has got this little lever on the turret dials now, where you don't need an Allen key to slip the scope and reset zero. You just flip
Oh,
it up, and but it's rock solid. It's not going to move on you,
mhm.
and that system. I wish that was around 30 years ago. God, it
Yeah.
would have changed the game.
Well,
I still have rifles with like business cards with dope charts taped on the
yep,
side of the
yep.
for like a
I have that
dinosaur.
on a couple rifles too. Yeah, definitely. And that's good that they fixed that because that was definitely one of the things I did not like about the VX5 and VX6 was having to take the Allen key
Yeah,
and adjust
it's
it.
it's a pain. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things. And if there's a tool or a detachable magazine, I will lose it.
Yeah,
That's just my nature. I will lose the day. It was in my pocket 2 seconds ago. No, it's gone.
yeah.
So I like to keep it simple, stupid. And this is brilliant. The new Gen 2 scopes. And God, that glass has come so far, so far. You look through stuff from the 70s, and it's like you got cataracts.
Yeah, that is definitely true. Stuff that you thought was great from back in the
Well,
day, and you
and
compare it to new
it
stuff.
was for the time period. I mean, don't get me wrong, but did it hold zero as well? Certainly not. These things are rugged, and there's other brands that have some of that Austrian stuff might have better glass, but it's nowhere near as tough, and it's certainly nowhere near as light.
Mhm.
And when you hike up 700 straight feet, you feel every ounce of your rifle scope combination you got.
So, what was the weather like on that hunt?
It was hot and it was dry. Now I'm coming in February from New York, where my skin hasn't seen the sun for at least 5 months. It was probably 85, 90 degrees,
Yeah.
with a wind blowing, and it was dry. My lips were bleeding within 2 days.
Yeah.
I was just hammering water trying to keep up with it because I couldn't. But you end up wearing like a hood over your head to keep the sun off you because I came home with a sunburn.
Yeah, I can imagine hunting them out there in September has got to be brutal
Oh, it's
too.
got to be terrible. But
Yeah.
they say that's when the breeding's hot and heavy. Their rut's on, and they're getting a little stupid. Which we we're men, we all do.
Yeah.
That's when the fun hunt is. But again, I was invited and I wasn't going to say no because I'd do another one tomorrow. I think those things are that fun.
And you said your previous hunt that you went on was also in February, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, that time of year out there, it can be super cold. You can have snow on the ground, or it can be 85 degrees like
Well,
that.
yeah, like I say, we in 19, I think it was 12 or 13 degrees in the morning, and then got up to the 50s, which was crazy.
Yeah.
And down there, in Marfa when we went, they had shipped out some sweatshirts and stuff. All that gear stayed in the truck,
Mhm.
or in the suitcase rather. And then we were out there like it was summertime.
Mhm.
So it's hit or miss, and you kind of got to prepare for that thing. I will recommend this: bring a good rugged pair of boots with ankle support.
Yeah, I'll bet.
As I get older, I've sprained my ankle so many times. The slightest thing in the world trips its trigger, and I'm looking for more and more ankle support as I get into my 50s, so that I don't end up, wounded and limping behind everybody.
Is this the sort of hunt where you do, like you do a lot of walking, but you don't necessarily need to bring a backpack or a big backpack or a
I don't
frame
think so.
backpack?
I don't. I mean, if you wanted to go for the day on foot, you could, but they've got such good vantage points cut with some of those roads that it's more like let's try and get up and glass that draw, and then you make the approach.
Yeah.
If they bust you, you're probably not going to be able to chase them on foot because once, like in Eland, once they go, they go.
Hmm. Yeah.
That kind of seems to be the situation. Would I bring a big survival backpack? No. I'd make sure I could carry some water though.
Yeah.
Energy bar or something like that.
Hmm. Yeah. And yeah, it sounds like having a tripod or something you could shoot off sitting is darn near essential with it too.
These little carbon fiber tripods. Loophole's got a great one. It's a little bulkier than others. Spartan makes a great one that goes in. Again, there's a socket, a magnetic recessed socket in the fore end of your rifle you got to put in, and that works wonderfully. And it doubles as a walking stick, which to you young bucks in your 20s and 30s might not feel you want, but I'm all about these days.
Yeah, I shot a Coues deer in Arizona way up on a mountain in 2019, and I'm really glad I had a trekking poles to help me get down because
Yeah,
I hurt my knee doing it with the trekking poles, and I might still be up there if I didn't
you're
have them.
100%. That's
Yeah.
the whole thing. Who's going to carry my fat ass off a mountain?
Hmm.
Going up to retrieve this goat we shot. It's not just a matter of how strong are you. Sometimes the rocks and the whole side of the mountain starts to slide.
Hmm.
And the guy who's above you trying to climb, he's kicking rocks down at you. It became a very interesting trek.
Yeah, so it sounds like a very short but intense hunt.
It was a fun one. I mean, I no bullshit. I would go back tomorrow. I think personally, I've not shot a coastal grizzly yet, and or billy goats, the mountain goats, but I think this is the most underrated and best value in North America right now.
Okay, fair enough. So even as they've gotten more expensive than they used to be, they're still a good value, huh?
Well, I mean, look, if you're a whitetail hunter, you're a whitetail hunter. I get that, but
Hmm.
what's a good elk run of these days?
Yeah.
I mean, you can get close to 20 grand without batting an eyelash,
Hmm.
and then try a moose or a coastal grizzly, and I bet you'll top that number.
Yeah.
And forget any of the natural, the 4 North American sheep.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have to sell the house.
Well, so what is the future holding for you later in 25 and next year if you have good plans already?
I've got I have to attend Rigby's 250th anniversary in London next month in the middle of May. That's going to be a fantastic event. It's a black tie event aboard HMS Victory,
Oh,
which
nice.
was Horatio Nelson's ship when where he was shot in Trafalgar.
Hmm.
And that's going to be a very special event. When that's all done, I'd love to get back on the horn with you and kind of cover that and all of that jazz. And then I've got a hunt with Griffin and Howe, who have a new safari rifle, the Criterion, coming out. It's a double square bridge Mauser, kind of a bespoke deal, a pretty high end American made hunting gun. We're going to take that to Zimbabwe and kind of put that through its paces on a buffalo and some other stuff as well. That's going to be I think it's the first week in November. So I got to start hydrating now.
Yeah, that'll be another hot, dry hunt.
That'll
for
be
you.
another warm one. That's right.
Hmm. Very, very good. Yeah, so that's the sort of stuff people normally expect out of you. But I thought it was good to throw them a curveball a little bit with the Aoudad hunt today.
Look, I like it all. I do like it all. My theory was always, with the volatility of Africa, countries were opening and closing left and right when I was a younger man, and every year they try to ban the importation of this, that, the other thing. I wanted to do Africa as much as I could while I was young and healthy and could walk and really enjoy it.
Hmm.
With the idea that I guess North America would always kind of be here.
Hmm.
But I get around. I'm a hell of a bear hunter. I love
There you
that
go.
stuff.
There you go. Very, very good. So I got to ask you the question now that I'm asking everybody that comes on the show this year.
Okay.
You must choose one to hunt with for the rest of your life. You can choose a single cartridge and use any bullet in it, or a single bullet and use that same bullet in any cartridge. What is your choice?
That's a tough one. I pick one bullet, and it's okay. So this is everything. This is the dangerous game of Africa and everything.
Or you give up hunting dangerous game, but I know that's going to be a tough sell for
That's
you.
not. It's like giving up breathing. I'm not having that.
So you could use, say, a Nosler partition in every single cartridge, or you could go with a 30-06 or a whatever.
All right, here's the answer. I got to go with the cartridge. It's going to be the 375 Holland and Holland. I know it's a boring, plain vanilla answer, but it gives me the solids to hunt hippo, elephant, Cape buffalo if needed. It also gives me the flexibility of going down to 235 grain bullets at 2,800 feet per second. And yes, we kill deer with that cartridge, with that combination routinely. Whitetails go right down. I can get 260 grain polymer boat tail bullets that are bonded core for elk and moose and all of that stuff. Plains game in Africa. And then I got the 300 and 350s to do all the heavyweights. I think there's been contenders for the throne, the 375 Ruger, the 375 Ultra Mag, the 375 Weatherby, but nothing's going to dethrone the good old 1912 375 H&H Magnum.
Yeah, fair enough. That is hard to beat, and I would expect nothing less out of you with that. And I'm actually looking on Nosler's website right now. They have a 260 grain Accubon that you could use in it, and you could have used that on this Aoudad hunt if you would have wanted.
100%. I mean, how much flatter and harder do you want to hit them?
All right. Well, very good, Phil. So I'll put a link to your Instagram and whatnot in the episode description, and anything else that you want me to put in there, I will. But thanks a lot for joining us on the show today.
John, it's always a pleasure, buddy.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that discussion. Like I mentioned, I am really starting to regret not hunting Aoudad back when I lived in El Paso, back when those hunts were less expensive than they are now. Now, even though Aoudad hunts are more expensive than they used to be, those are still not extremely expensive hunts in the grand scheme of things, and they're still a pretty good bargain, especially if you're looking for a mountain hunt of some sort, especially for mountain goat. And from what I hear, they also seem to be a heck of a lot of fun. Have a listen to episode 218 to hear the story of another Aoudad hunt with podcast listener Leighton Norwood. If you listen to this show on Spotify, be sure to answer the poll question in the Spotify app on this same subject. Also, be sure to give Phil a follow on Instagram via the link in the episode description as well. He's a great follow on Instagram. And finally, don't forget to sign up at biggamehuntingpodcast.com/ebook or at the link in the episode description to get my ebook on the best hunting calibers and to join my email list. Remember, you can make your dream hunt turn into a reality, and we can help. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here next time on the Big Game Hunting Podcast.